The Bishop of London is not only responsible for the Anglican churches in the capital city, but also the royal chapels. You'll know the royal family well from your work as Dean of the Chapels Royal. And presumably the Queen is someone who is of deep spiritual faith.
I think that's become very publicly clear, hasn't it, from her Christmas broadcasts, because they have been much more explicitly Christian, and she has always had very firm and deep faith. And I think that that actually corresponds with a very great turn in the tide. Because I remember, actually it was a Director General of the BBC giving a lecture not so long ago and saying that, of course, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when the Queen was already 30 years on the throne, everybody was convinced that the story of God would have only one ending, and it would be relegation to the leisure sector. It would be the harmless hobby of fairly eccentric people. Well, nobody is saying that now. So the Queen has united all these periods, and very appropriately, I think, for the present, for this contemporary age, she is being much more explicit about her own faith.
60 years on, do you think that as a nation we treasure the concept of that coronation as much as we should?
One of the most extraordinary things about monarchy in this country, again and again, the actual event is hugely uniting. And I think that was true of the coronation, although, of course, at that time, Britain was emerging from austerity. I remember, I think I still had my own ration card in 1953. I think we still had ration cards then. And it had been a rather drab, austere world as we recovered. There were bomb sites everywhere in London. And so I think the coronation had a particular role there. The reaction to the Queen when she goes on her visits has always been beyond what people might expect. And the number of people who talk about, the lightest word, which is why, of course, the Queen has to be very careful, as she knows very well, because what she says is remembered for a lifetime.
It's a big responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility, and I think unless you have gone through every day being engaged, being interested, reaching out to people who may be in awe, looks quite easy, but actually it is an enormous responsibility, and one which I think, if you're thinking about the PR profession, public relations, they're all experts on how you keep yourself in the public eye for about 10 years. Because actually after 10 years in the public eye, people are very tired of you. The Queen, it seems to me, is perhaps the only expert on how you keep yourself in the public eye for more than 80 years, and people want more.
choir of Westminster Abbey played an important role in the coronation service, of course, not from their usual choir stalls here, but up there, where they had a bird's eye view of the unforgettable scene below.
We were in a specially created sort of box, if you like, and we were on the front row. We always like to be in the front row. So we had as good a view as was possible to have, albeit clearly you had to kind of crane towards your right to really see what was going on when Her Majesty was at the high altar, because that wasn't readily in our vision. And we also had to watch the beat from Dr. Mackay to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to do. But at every opportunity we were able to sort of lean around and check it out, which was great.
And your memory is in living colour. Most of us just remember that sort of rather wide shot in grainy,
Yes.
black and white and not great sound, but you, of course, had a box seat.
My overriding memory really is, it's perhaps a strange word to use, but it was the glamour of it. I mean, it was the most extraordinary feeling of light and gold and ermine and purple and red and diamonds and what have you. An extraordinary feeling of a little bit like a major Hollywood movie in a way. That was the overriding feeling that I got. And of course there were certain moments which were quite extraordinary. I remember when the actual crown was placed on Her Majesty's head, it seemed to be very, very slow before it actually got there. And the yell from the boys of Westminster School shouting "Vivat, Vivat Regina." I get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, that was a huge thrill, you know, when you realise that actually you were in the presence of history.
You must have been stuck up there for some time.
I think it was about 6 hours. And part of the fun for us was, for the first time, we were allowed to bring a packed lunch.
Were you eating during the service?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that was sort of a no-go area. I mean, you can imagine that was not part of the discipline. So to be able to do that legitimately with permission was great. I was personally very lucky because William Mackay, Dr. Mackay, chose 3 boys to sing a solo in unison for a specially commissioned anthem called "O Taste and See." It was a huge honour, of course, and I think Dr. Mackay hedged his bets because I think the event was so huge that he thought if one of us got nervous, then at least the other 2 would come in. Well, I was the boy who got nervous. And I did come in slightly later, but full throttle once I got there.
I'm sure nobody noticed
I
apart
don't
from
think
you.
so.
It was a magnificent ceremony all the way through, of course, but some moments would have stood out more than others. For instance, when the Queen first entered the Abbey.
I was glad. I mean, one of the most fantastic, exhilarating, powerful pieces of music one would ever have the good fortune to sing, and I loved that. I mean, it was great. The last rehearsal, which I believe was when Her Majesty came, she was wearing the imperial crown as she processed from the Great West Door to the high altar. And she did ask the Duke of Norfolk to ask Dr. Mackay, the master of the choristers, if we could sing a little quicker because the crown was heavy. I think I didn't make that up.
Happy days?
Very happy days indeed, yes. I feel a huge sense of pride. I'm a great royalist anyway, and I feel that having been given this opportunity and this God-given gift, which I was given, to have been a part of this extraordinary ceremony is truly great.
It's time now to hear another sublime piece of choral music based on the Old Testament words from the first book of Kings. It's been sung at every coronation since that of George II. And 60 years ago, Her Majesty would have heard this at the very moment that she became sovereign. Our congregation are led by pupils from schools in Canterbury in Handel's glorious anthem, Zadok the Priest.